Welcome to Rules for Retrogrades. I'm your host, Timothy J. Gordon, and this is my YouTube channel. A little bit about myself. I went to both law school and graduate school, corresponding with the two purposes of the show that I'm going to explain for you a little bit. I have two areas of expertise. I went to law school not to practice law, but to study the Constitution at the best law school I could find to make a serious dive into constitutional studies, and I did so. Also, I have a master's degree and a licentiate in Aristotomist philosophy, and I'm working on a doctorate in Aristotomist philosophy. The reason I didn't get the doctorate and I went to law school instead was because my daughter was born there in Rome, where I was studying at the Gregorian Pontifical University, the first Jesuit school in the world, under one of the world's most famous Thomists. Came back here, went to law school, did a bunch of other things like start this podcast, and now I'm finishing the doctorate that I hoped to complete in Rome. You'll see how this plays out in the two purposes of this show: Catholic perspective brought to the secular world, and a faithful Thomistic perspective reintroduced into the church. I have 6 kids. I have a lovely wife, Steph, who many people who watch this program already know, and I am here for the fight. Welcome also to my newer subscribers. Lots of you have been with me for 2 to 3 years. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we do here on Rules for Retrogrades. The show is for conservative Catholics. The show is for bold yet obedient Catholics. And what it offers is a traditional perspective, a show of analysis that is in the world but not of the world, partly of secular culture and politics, and partly of the church's culture and politics. There aren't any other shows out there on the internet that do exactly what I do, which is very close to half-half. Secular culture, Catholic culture. Tradition for bold yet obedient Catholics is what Rules for Retrogrades is all about. It's what I founded the channel on. The skull behind me that you see that gets a lot of comments reminds everyone to remember their death, memento mori. There is a small crypt in the Barberini Piazza in Rome, where I lived for a time, where my first daughter was born. It's called the Capuchin Crypt. It's made all of Capuchin monks' bones, the skulls, the skins. It's terrifying. But what it's attempting to do is to have folks that visit it, memento mori, remember their deaths. There's a little saying at the end room of the hall. It goes like this: what you are now, we once were. What we are now, you soon will be. Whether we're talking secular politics or Episcopal Catholic politics and culture, the message here on Rules for Retrogrades is the same. Live life in preparation for death. That's how you live boldly yet obediently. Please follow my channel if you don't already. Thanks for coming in to join me. I think you're going to really get a lot out of what we do here on Rules for Retrogrades. Deus Volt. What's up, parish orphans and retrogrades? I bring to you a special announcement today before my video with Mr. Shawn Farash, along with my friend Joe Boca, my friend Boss. We did a 4-way interview with Shawn Farash, who's a mutual friend of Joe Boca's. I promised you that today, September 11th, would occasion a special talk given myself in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Originally, I thought that talk was going to be at a Faith Family Flag event, which ended up being contested and shut down. It went from event venue to event venue, and it was shut down eventually by all of 3 venues who thought it was too controversial just to get together with some other speakers you know quite well and talk about Faith Family Flag, men's issues, a men's conference. That's no longer happening because the venues kept shutting us down. But I will still be today, in just a couple hours, starting at 1 p.m., speaking with my friend, Dr. Michael Robillard, and a goodly priest. The 3 of us will be talking at the Old Blind Dog Irish Pub in Brookhaven, in the Atlanta area. So come on out. If you're already in the area, come on out. We're going to be giving 3 separate talks to a Catholic group And, maybe I'll say some of the same words that I was going to say at the other conference. It's at the Old Blind Dog in Brookhaven. Should be a great time. I encourage you to come on out. And we are going to be praying today for all those American souls, almost 3,000 lost on September the 11th. It's the 20th anniversary. We just got over a 20-year war in Afghanistan, and there's lots of prayer to go around, and there's lots of fighting still to be done, fighting for justice and the right cause. We Catholics need to do it. Deus Vult, come and hang out with me at the Old Blind Dog Pub.
What's up, parish orphans and retrogrades? Timothy Gordon here with another podcast within a podcast in Not Of here on the Rules for Retrogrades channel. I have got three friends with me doing what we do. You're going to hear some dialogue on how in today's post-Republican America, that's a small R, one can actually take action where one is and hopefully make a difference. So ostensibly, Joe, make a difference in your neighborhood. I'm here with my friend Joe Boca in I don't know which corner, and with of course Anthony Boss in another one of the corners, and with Loud Majority's Shawn Farash. What's up, boys? How are you doing? Thanks for joining in Not Of Rules for Retrogrades today. Hope you're all well.
Very well, Tim.
Doing well.
Well, as always. As always.
As always, just doing outstanding,
always.
Tim. Sorry I can't be there with you in person.
So am I. Look, it's funny. Only in trad Catholicism or what have you would this be like a diverse, inclusive, ecumenical project, bringing together like four young or relatively young, I bring the average up a bit, young dudes who are, not very far away from one another at all on the ideological spectrum, probably pretty identical on the ideological spectrum. But, it takes trad Catholicism to make me look diverse and inclusive. But what we wanted to do today, especially with Shawn's Loud Majority project, is talk a little bit about, one like ad ringer on this show that I bring to bear pretty much once a show here on Rules for Retrogrades is I tell people more or less, GTFO from your state when it comes to blue states. I come from California, which is a very blue state, and I came to Mississippi, which is a very red state, and I'm always reading this ad copy for Real Estate for Life. Leave the bluest of the blue, get to the reddest of the red states. realestateforlife.org will help you, which is true. Go there. But at the same time, I look at what Shawn, you're doing with your crew, Loud Majority, there in Long Island, New York, and you're actually doing what all these cats back in California claim to be doing when they stay there, but they're not doing anything. They're just like, what if we stay and fight? And then it's like, but you're not, how many Antifas have you fought? How many Black Lives Matter punks in the street have you fought? How many school board meetings have you gone to? And you're actually doing it. So you're kind of the answer to my rhetorical question when I ask people on this show who try to defend not voting with their feet and getting out of their mini republic, their state, but staying home. You actually are doing that stuff. You want to just maybe we can dialogue that a little bit, fellas.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to if you're stuck in a blue state or if you're living in a blue state and you have a reason to leave, you have a family, you've got kids that are in the public school system, which can't be an option these days, is based off of what I've seen. And last night at the East Meadow School District out here in Long Island, they locked half the public out of the meeting. It was straight out of the Soviet Union. I mean, we were standing outside, locked out of the building. They were letting one person in at a time. You had to wear a face diaper. You couldn't go, you go in there. You had 3 barking seals in the front. Every time a doctor said something, oh, very good. Wow. Okay. The science. And it was the most pathetic display, but it was depressing. And there's a lot around New York and a lot around Long Island that's depressing. And it's, you just see the swamp at work, and you didn't think it seeped that deep into the school boards, but it does. And you could take to the streets And you could take it right to BLM, and you could take it right to Antifa, and but you've got to find like-minded people, right? Because if you take this fight on alone, eventually they're going to realize you're alone, and they're just going to pick you right off. So you got to assemble a crew, and a guy running for governor out here, Lee Zeldin, he said it right when he announced his campaign that it's okay to go play defense in red states. It's okay to go defend Texas and Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, wherever you may be in a red state, South Dakota, wherever. But the way to take the country back is to go on offense in blue states. And there's a lot of people who think New York is a lost cause. Those people might be right. But I'm willing to test that theory and test it to its breaking point, because I don't think New York is a lost cause. I think there's too many people who think New York is a lost cause, and they've lost motivation to go out there and do something. I think there's too many people that think that, well, it's a blue state. New York's not a blue state. New York just has one very big blue city. And if we could just come out around that city and overwhelm the numbers in that city, we will be a red state. It was only 20 years ago where we had a Republican governor. 20 years ago. So, it's not that far, in the past. And then when you see every single Democrat that's been at the helm of New York State for the last 20 years, they've all had their terms cut short. Right? They for one reason or another, they've had their terms cut short. And then you see what Cuomo just did, and the stain that he left here. And now Kathy, who took over for him, isn't doing much better. She's out there acting like the Queen of England, mandating everything and all over the place. Talking the Department of Health has to mandate this, so we got to mandate that. Did she not learn? Does she not care? Well, probably not. She's a Democrat. She's a liberal, and they don't really care about the individual working person in New York. But we are out and we are taking to the streets, and we've been at it for over almost a year. September 6th will make 1 year. And we're going to every school board meeting. It's been intense. And what happened last night in East Meadow was disgusting. But, we're going to continue to force this fight through the school boards, because if you could stop Yuri Bezmenov, he's a KGB whistleblower, says you indoctrinate one generation of students, 20 years of education. Those people wind up running for office, and then you're stuck with them. He's KGB. He told you exactly how they're doing it. And that's exactly what's going on here. And if we can put a stop to that system, if you can put a stop to that, you have a great chance of making some real progress.
Yeah. One thing, though, Shawn, that I wonder how you figure this in. Like, every state is all red aside from the urban areas, which are blue as blue can be. And that's how California is, too. Now we have probably, 7 or 8 big cities in California. Pardon me, not we, they. They have 7 or 8 big urban areas in California. The entire interior state is agricultural, red. And I know that's the case with New York. It's not, people all say it about like their own state as if it's unique. It's not sui generis. It's the phenomenon in America. So like one thing is, yeah, it would be cool if every American, or even everyone who's watching this, is Shawn Farash out there getting involved, doing what you're doing with the Loud Majority guys, or doing any of the undertakings that any of us here are committed to, then of course the world would be a different place. But given all that, what kind of response are you getting from, the comfortable right-wing suburbanites there, which there's plenty of that out in Long Island? I mean, how many of these people are you actually able to mobilize to test that theory? That theory that, well, like I said, if you stay in your home state and to fight, which is what all my Californian friends are always telling me, but they're not doing what you're doing. Most people stay in the name of fighting and just watch TV after work, which is what they always did. You see what I mean?
That's what we were dealing with. I mean, we were dealing with that out here for a little bit, and then Smithtown happened, and we found out that there was, we had documents, foils into the school district that proved that teachers were being trained, to learn about white privilege, and then obviously taking that training into the classroom. When you can get information and arm yourself with information, especially if it's information like that, and then you can get that information out to the people in those districts. Let's take Smithtown for an example, which has always been traditionally a red, leaning or a heavily red district. It's one of the reasons why Congressional District 1 in the East End of Long Island, which is Lee Zeldin's congressional district, usually goes Republican. It's because of Smithtown. It's their red wall. And when you take the information of, okay, well, the children are going into school and they're learning about white privilege and they're learning things that are basically critical race theory, and they're getting indoctrinated, and our country as a whole is 30th in the world in math, and they're not learning English, they're not learning science, they're not reading the classics, they're not learning anything about how to be a good person or how to prepare yourself to compete on the global stage or get a job, right? They're learning in our state, diversity, equity, and inclusion is the name of the framework, and the goals it's stated in that framework are to prepare children for a lifetime of civic engagement and social justice activism. Well, a lifetime of civic engagement sure sounds like a career in politics. Of course, they want to indoctrinate kids and then stick them into the political system because that just continues to further their agenda. And then social justice activism, I mean, you know what that means. That's Black Lives Matter. That's standing on a street corner for no reason saying justice for George Floyd. You know what I mean? That's all that goes on, and that's what they're teaching these kids how to do. And when you put it that way to these parents, you say, listen, and these residents, and you say, hey, it's not just about the kids getting indoctrinated. It's not just about, how you feel about Donald Trump, which a lot of people, look, I love Donald Trump, but a lot of people have to make the separation. Not every single thing that Donald Trump does, you have to do. He was at the rally the other day. He was like, I'm going to get the vaccine. And they booed him. I'm like, all right, great. That's good. Finally, you realize you're allowed to disagree with the guy. Like, you're allowed to be your own person. People don't understand that being a golden calf worshiper makes you exactly what the left is. You're just worshiping a different calf, right? They worship the golden calf of government. If there are people out there worshiping Donald Trump, you have a problem. And then the accusation that you're in a cult might be true, right? But Smithtown was a great example because they normally get around 2,500 votes in their school board elections, and they had 3 seats up right now. They usually get about 2,500 votes in their school board elections. We were able to bring out almost 9,500 votes in the school boards. We flipped 3 seats. The assistant superintendent resigned because we wiped out all of our allies on the board, and we got results. And that's the point. There is a way to mobilize these people, but it's all about messaging, right? If you're out in California and you're fighting, you're staying and fighting in the name of staying and fighting. Well, I'm just going to stay and fight, but you don't do anything. It's pointless. But that just means that someone isn't reaching them. They understand there's a problem because they know they want to stay and fight, but they don't know how or they don't know where to start fighting. And that's because there's nobody reaching them. And so what I would say is if there's anyone out there listening in California who's got the idea, jump on, put it out on social media, do whatever you got to do, but reach the people that you have to reach. Make it an America First issue. Make it an issue that if you were Donald Trump, how would you get those people to come to a rally? There are a lot of people here on Long Island still who are afraid or kind of dipping their toes in the water, left hand in, left hand out. I'm not sure what I want to do. But the school boards for them is the way to get involved because you don't have to declare a political party. You don't have to go out there and say you're a Trump supporter or you voted for Hillary or anything like that. You're just going there to make sure that your kid is getting the right education. And this is about being a parent and a tax-paying resident and to make sure that your money is going towards something that you want it to go to so that taxation isn't theft down the road. And it helps people kind of start to get involved. If they start getting involved in the school boards, they say, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. What else is like this? And I go, you know what else is like this? County legislator seats, New York governor seats, state Senate seats, everything like that locally in your backyard. And now people start to realize, wow, I got results. I went to the school board. I spoke my piece. They listened to me. Other parents supported me. There is a support system. I'm not alone. And the people start to become empowered. They start to become addicted to the results if you can give them results. And what we've done here is we've gotten some results. We have a couple of school districts out here that are removing the mask mandate, that are saying that masks are going to be optional, that are taking a stand not just against critical race theory, but against the diversity, equity, and inclusion framework that New York State is trying to implement in every public school in the state. They're taking a stand against that, and they're doing it finally the right way. They're not just going to school boards saying, don't teach critical race theory, because these districts are going, we're not teaching critical race theory. They're right. They're teaching diversity, equity, inclusion. It's the same thing, but you have to call it the right way. It's word games. It's what they do. It's what the left does. But for the people, We have not been able, conservatives, Republicans, whatever, to reach the suburban woman, the housewife, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it. Trump had a hard time reaching that. These are the people that are coming down to these board meetings. And if you thought when you watch, Johnny's not the starting quarterback and Johnny's mom and dad are pissed and they're going to the coach and they're screaming and yelling, why isn't my, those are not mad parents. Those are frustrated parents. What's going on in these school board meetings, these are irate, incensed parents that have had enough. And this is what we need. When conservatives get mad, they take action.
So let's get Joe and Boss in on this. One, that all sounds good when you say it, Shawn, aside from the fact that you lost me when you said taxation is not theft. But aside from that, it all sounds pretty good. I don't know if there's something, Joe, Boss, unique to the Long Island area or the New York area. Maybe New Yorkers are just more confrontational. But to me, people in the burbs are lost. They would not fight to save their own lives. And maybe New Yorkers are just a little bit more, they've lost less of that confrontationality. But to me, you have the suburban problem. Most of the conservatives are in the burbs. All the lefties are in the urban centers. It's really hard to mobilize people who are complacent, fat, happy, comfortable, even as they're whistling past the graveyard and the heavens are falling on their heads bit by bit. And then two, there's also the problem, Joe or Boss, you respond to this, of like retaking the public schools. Like, is public education the solution? We seem way past that, and I don't even really think we ever should have had that. I love what's being done by guys like Shawn and Loud Majority, but I mean, politics is downstream of culture, isn't it? Isn't this a cultural issue, or like what's up? What's the solution?
Yeah, I would agree. I do. Of course, I appreciate. I've been friends with Shawn for about 17 years. I appreciate. Just doing something is better than doing is certainly better than doing nothing, especially
100%.
Yeah. From the moral standpoint, because you have to in circumstances like this, you have to act. My view on it is a little more dour, because I look at it as the Hydra situation. I mean, if you cut off one head, I think another one or two are going to grow. My own view on politics is similar. I'm one of these, by no means what I say everybody has to share this, but I'm one of these people that advocates, at least when people talk to me, for not voting at all. I think a non-vote says more a lot of the time than a vote. And unless you have just an absolutely stellar candidate, which is not usually what you're seeing, not just in New York, but anywhere else. So we were at the anti-jab rally in the city, and while I attended myself, and while I saw that as it was good that it happened, I saw a lot of positive things, but it was also a mixed bag of complacent people. I think certain people might have been interested in politics for the sake of politics, and making a name for themselves. People who are like, well, it might be good to get the jab, but I support your right not to do so.
Right.
These types of capitulations, and not addressing, making it more of a liberty issue than about the issue itself. These are the types of conservatives, quote unquote conservative standpoints, that I really have no time for. Especially looking at. So for those of us, I haven't read the whole thing, but I'm going through the first edition of the first volume of the Gulag Archipelago. So if you look at, Soviet style Marxism is more like classical Marxism, in which we're looking at class, the whole idea of, Marxist class warfare, where they're using the, economic framework to create class warfare. So land ownership and how much money you have in the banks, so on and so forth. Neo-Marxism has it designed where, well, okay, so we definitely want to create class warfare, but what are the means? So we're not looking now at economics, we're looking at a type of medical class warfare. So I just texted Shawn last night that we're basically those of us who haven't gotten the jab, or maybe refuse to wear a mask, or don't comply with the COVID thing. You're basically the new kulaks, and these were the people that owned land in the Soviet Union, and eventually the kulak class in the Soviet Union turned into the class that maybe had $1 more than you, and then you were worth arresting. So
I thought you said culottes at first, like
no,
like
Kulak, kulak. So that's so in my estimation, I mean, once if you know a little bit of history, it's almost indisputable that that's what we're heading towards. With that said, into whether I'm on the island myself, it is morally incumbent upon you to, when you're basically in the middle of the October Revolution, to not sit back and get beat up. You have to do something, and the degree to which you can have some kind of effect locally, that's as good as subsidiarity. And we could look to, I think this is obviously a red state, but Idaho, for instance, when they were looking to ship Black Lives Matter protesters into Coeur d'Alene, the residents were waiting for them, and it's my understanding that the bus turned around. So that can happen. That can happen anywhere, and Long Island's an interesting place, and I wouldn't. If Long Island, for instance, were its own state, which probably won't ever happen, it would be a swing state, from what I understand, and we're about population-wise, I think we're right under Virginia. So it's a little different than the California situation, where you have about 9 big cities calling the shots. We do have one massive city, but Long Island itself has a pretty big population, and it's a cash cow.
Are you guys saying that like Buffalo and Albany are not inside city limits? They're not blue? I meant to ask.
They are blue. No, they are blue, but they're not big enough to sway an election, right? Buffalo, Rochester, Albany, they're blue, but they're not big enough to play as crucial a role as Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. There's just not enough. Like Buffalo is shrinking, right? So absolutely, you walk down the streets of Buffalo, you may see more liberals than conservatives, right? Or whatever. But the same thing will happen to you in Albany. But they're not big enough to sway an election. So politicians aren't going to worry about Buffalo. Andrew Cuomo made his career on destroying Buffalo. The Buffalo Billions Project, $750 million invested into, I think it was Solar City, and that went nowhere. And Buffalo was destroyed. And then he went as far as to take the Buffalo Wing, during COVID, and said, oh, yeah, you have to go to a bar. If you want to drink, you got to order food. Soup counts. Buffalo wings don't count. Dude, you are the governor of New York, my man. Why would you take a dump on a city that largely is going to vote for you? Well, it's because 5 people are in Buffalo and they're going to vote for him. That's the problem. So, those cities aren't going to sway an election. Yes, they're blue, but they're not election swayers. They're not these big blue chip cities that you've got to land in order to win a statewide election.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues at dynamic, and I think one of the things you got to remember too is the psychological warfare aspect of it. So if you get guys who already feel like they're defeated, then you've already won, whether the war's over or not. And so you've got to organize, you've got to do things, but you've got to attack it from 7 different angles also, right? Because you're talking about the 7-headed hydra. You cut off one, there's another head. So you got to look at the body. You got to look at attacking the body. And so you got guys on the school board. You guys got going after all these other things, but there's not a Shawn for every other area of society, I guess is the way to look at it. We got to find these guys that are willing to do it, to stand up and to take on their own particular interests that they have going on at the time. Because if you look at the Midwest, right, I have more experience with the Midwest. There's a lot of salt of the earth, good, obviously, red-blooded Americans there. The problem is they're very comfortable. They'll sit back. It's not their problem. Their city is fine. They just don't live in the big cities, right? Their little town, their little homegrown town's good. But again, the major city comes in and they just wipe out the election. Even states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, they're getting to that point now where the cities are just going to overwhelm. And that's because everybody's just sitting back, very comfortable with how they are. That might happen where they're at, but not where I'm at. See, the liberals, they all congregate together, then they're in mass, and then they move together. Where the liberals will say, okay, I'm going to stockpile food, guns, whatever, they'll prep, do all this stuff. but the closest person is 30 miles away from them, and that's no good. You've got to get together and you've got to organize. But there's just so many different areas where we've just seeded everything. We've seeded everything out. We got too busy just working, doing our day-to-day stuff. For me, the school stuff's great, but I've been homeschooling. I mean, that was the plan from the very beginning, because growing up, I saw where it was going, where we were getting to, and so that's exactly where we went to, was homeschool. I didn't even want to have to deal with any of that stuff, and just seeing the things going on right now, even in rural parts of Minnesota, let's say, the stuff that they're bringing into the school system's insane. They're doing reports on Greta Thunberg and all these people. I figure they're in the news and they're gone. It's being just indoctrinated into the actual programs now. So every year these kids are learning about these people. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's pretty much my perspective too, boss. Like, look, indoctrinating kids in the public schools is like shooting fish in a barrel. And if we're talking about the whole project of some sort of restoration of America, there's been something that's come to be called the Long March through the institutions by the Marxists in America. You take the 7 or 8 institutions of American culture. We're talking news media, entertainment media, lower ed, higher ed, the church, Christianity, the sports are one of them themselves. And it's actually the most ready-made first institution for these Marxists, the apparatchiks of the left, to storm is lower public ed, right? But lower and higher public ed. It's like, it's government education, indoctrination. So it's gonna be bad. That's the perspective you're gonna get from a couple homeschoolers. I watch Loud Majority content from time to time to see what Shawn's doing. I'm like, man, that's exciting. I mean, what you guys are doing, managing to get everybody at those school board meetings pissed off is beautiful. It's something of beauty. You're doing something there it's not magic. It could be formulatized and algorithmized, but there's something about, maybe I just hate the suburbs, right? There's something about the American suburban spirit, which is almost like a stalking horse for talking about the American conservative spirit. And it's been so ready to capitulate. And it's so many people in the burbs are like, stay and fight, because they just don't want to leave California. And all these suburbs spread all across Southern California, which is what I represent. We're a good cross-section of the country here, the four of us, west to east. And I'm like, but I mean, you've never been in a fight, right? Like, so... like, how can you say that if you've never been in a fight? How can you say that if you've never been to a school board meeting? How can you say it if you've never been to one rally? But you got to do more. And I don't like the prospect of taking back all the 7 or 8 institutions by just by the political process alone, because I don't even like the energy that particularly in the American West, where everyone's a little bit more isolated from each other, and out in the East, you're more confrontational because everyone's on top of each other. Everything grows up. I just don't think it's realistic to retake all the different localities of America, like institution by institution. My whole thing is like balkanize, get all the conservatives in the country organized within a few contiguous states. And then we can start talking about some serious, if we're just going to shortcut to the political process, take the shortcut. Nullification, who knows? Maybe someday secession down the road. I was looking at some work by Michael Bolden at the 10th Amendment Center, and I'm like, this is, if we want to shortcut the culture, all of the cultural compression, decompression, recompression that has to be done to make up for 100 years of conservatives not fighting the leftist takeover, the Marxist takeover, the culture. If we want to go to political shortcuts, I'm always like, look, nullification, states' rights, eventually secession. This is the way to go. Like, why is this not the solution in any of your minds?
Well, secession, it's funny, it's one of the bad words in society, but secession is as American as apple pie. And it's funny that we have that it would appear to me that the whole perception of secession well, obviously it changed completely after the Civil War, but Lincoln Abraham Lincoln just demonizing the idea of the separation of, even the idea of the Union didn't even seem to have any precedent until after Lincoln's presidency. So it was prior to Lincoln, it was just as we understand it, it was the United States, emphasis on states. And
Capital
then after
S.
correct. Yeah. So then after the Civil War, I mean, he centralizes, the federal government, centralizes the banks, everything, and we have this entirely new conception of government as a central authority. So it's the Civil War was obviously quietly one of America's worst revolutions. So it started, but really it goes all the way back, it seems like, to Alexander Hamilton, where it's like you could read a stronger federal government into the Constitution, whereas Thomas Jefferson would not have agreed. So everything is just, but as Shawn was talking, as you were talking, it was obvious to me that I don't know if anybody's a fan of like Jocko Willink. Everything seems to me of just a complete failure in leadership. So we talk about, so Anthony says that, homeschool, right? And which is the right answer in almost every context, unless you have a decent Catholic school. However, I mean, even in New York, we at one point, and you could juxtapose, we had Archbishop John Hughes years and years ago. So he was the one who was strongly in pushing for the Catholic schools to Catholic. So he was like saying you ought not to go to the public schools. Now we have guys like Dolan here who are the curriculum in the Catholic school is indistinguishable from the curriculum in the public school. They just hang a crucifix on the wall, but they adopt Common Core. They adopt every single thing that the public school teaches, maybe within reason. But I mean, for us, I could just speak for myself. When I was going to public school, we didn't think of the Catholic school kids as any more virtuous because we knew they weren't. So 100%. It was in fact, if anything, we actually used to think of them as likely preppies. Less virtuous, preppies, and we always just assumed like they have more money to go and do more bad things, which is what they were doing.
Exactly.
So that was just always our, like, at least for us when we were in public school, we were like, well, at least we're all at least kind of real, you know what I mean? And they're just a bunch of frauds. But
well, that's a perfect example, though, if I can jump in on that with the leadership portion. So you take somebody like Dolan, who's a Midwest boy, you take him to the big city of New York. He's rubbing elbows with celebrities. He's meeting politicians. That's the wrong kind of leadership in the wrong place. You cannot have that. Yeah, absolutely. And then you added some money and some other things. So we need guys like Shawn, Loud Majority, doing what they're doing. Then we need guys like Joe doing, I don't know, lifting weights in his basement, apparently, when it drops from the ceiling, right? And then
weight bench.
We got to have, yeah. And then you got Tim, who's teaching homeschool stuff online, so you can maybe do like a co-op type situation, okay? And that's one big part of it, is we got to look at all these different issues and start getting involved, like most of us are, right? The other aspect, again, the right leadership in the right places, is now we have to say, okay, now who are the people thinking long term? Because everything we do, we think short term. And these liberals are really good at the long game, where they think 1 generation, 2 generation, 3 generations from now. So small little victories we can take on our way to the larger effort, but we have to think long term also. We can't just look at like, well, we're kind of getting defeated right now in this situation and it's all over. And again, once that psychological defeat happens, it's already over. And that's the other thing I think we're really bad at.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what I'm pointing out here. Like, I admire the work that all three of you guys do. And if we were to elect any one of maybe Shawn's political top down, culture is downstream of politics, which seems to be suggested more by the MO of Loud Majority, but they do it well. Like Shawn, you're doing it well. Or you take more the Andrew Breitbart, expression at its face. No, politics is downstream of culture. And then you take the approach that maybe me or Joe or Boss are taking. Well, if you do any of these different iterations of some sort of right-wing restoration of America, which really is by its inception a right-wing place, particularly before the Civil War. You know, after Lincoln, the tyrant, rolled up all the state militias into the Coast Guard, National Guard, and did all the things he did, which were all pretty much bad. It's a right-wing place, and it's a right-wing restoration project. If we could get sizable enough constituencies behind anything we're doing, like, yeah, let's just go with that. Even though we're pulling in sort of different directions, any of these approaches, if they turned into the maxim for all the conservatives in the burbs, I'm really beating up on the burbs today, it would work. Like, I'm with you. I'm with Shawn when he says that. Like, if we could take Shawn Farash and, like the Matrix, reduplicate his face on all the suburbanites in
Be a
New
lot of
York.
good-looking people. Let me tell you something.
Scare all the mice away.
What a
Yeah.
treat. What a treat for the ladies, first off. But secondly,
A lot of little Bradley Coopers running around, huh? What is going on here?
yeah, no, that's what. then we wouldn't have a problem. But we can't just make the categorical imperative. We can't just make, you into a maxim, or what I'm trying to do into a maxim. That's not how it works. So I don't know how to energize quote unquote conservatives. Some of the people that watch this show are some of the most energetic far right wing Catholic people that you'll ever meet. But I don't know how to energize a big enough constituency to make a difference. That's the Sphinx's riddle to me. I don't know if any of us can figure that out, and I don't know if any Republican candidate can figure that out. Why? Because they figure they got to play the middle to win. There aren't people that are willing enough to be on the fringe, the right. Whether you're talking actually go to every school board meeting and yell, that's fringe right. Or my solution is more like, look, get yourself in 6 or 7 or 8 really, really already red states, hopefully ones without big cities, which is why we came to Mississippi, because it can't need nothing to queer the deal here. There are no big cities. And so it's all red. And then we'll talk again once all of America's conservatives are in the 6, 7, 8 states. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Right? So it's all fringe right, but you can't get suburbanites to do any of this stuff, man, outside of 10% or less. So what's to be done? Whether you start with politics and move to culture or vice versa, I just find it hard. Caesar wanted men about him who were fat, complacent, happy, right? From Shakespeare's tragedy of Caesar. I just don't know how to get around the brute moral fact of demographics, that's most people who go around calling themselves conservatives. They're not liberals, they're radicals. They tend to be lean, hungry, they're good at community organizing. They also don't have to play by the moral framework we play by, so that's a way they can bend the rules, run out of bounds when we have to play within the rules. We have to stay in bounds. But aside from that, they're just lean. They're the ne'er-do-wells, the have-nots. They're lean, hungry. They're trying to foment envy begetting more envy. Class envy, class warfare. Not just within economic confines, within the confines of any category they can throw against the wall. Sex, whatever. What are you cisgender privileged? Are you, do you have color? Do you whatever? Like, they have reified all of these different categories. They don't play by rules. They're lean and hungry. They will cheat to win, and they think about winning 24/7. Sun Tzu tells me to know my enemy, and I just say, this is a formula to win, even if they're not winning the honorable way. Then I look at, again, the burbs, and I'm like, these people won't follow the politics first approach of a Shawn Farash. They won't follow the right-wing culture first approach of a Tim Gordon. So I don't know how to save these people. Well, there's an expression for them in Fight Club that I can't repeat on air, but it's like the two pandas who won't procreate in the zoo to save the species. To me, that's conservatives. I don't know what am I seeing wrong, Shawn? How am I not seeing this right?
Yeah, you're not seeing anything wrong. You're 100% right that it's not easy to get these people active because they're not used to it. You have to think about it. You have to really change the way they've been behaving for 40 years. It's the whole silent majority mindset. We'll come out when it matters. Well, you have to realize that now we're at a point where it matters every single day. The day you take your foot off the gas, the day you give, I say give no ground all the time to everybody, give no ground means they're going to try and take from you, and you have to, at this point in time, say no. So when you talk about a secession, what's happening is ideologically, I could speak anecdotally about Long Island. There is an ideological secession. There's a behavioral secession. People are not everybody. It's not enough yet, but it's growing. Put a mask on. People are saying no. It's just not happening. There are signs in some of these supermarkets now that say you have to wear a mask. I walk in there without one. I see people walking in there without one, and they're just not having it. Get the vaccine. If you're a doctor or a nurse, they're quitting. And that's another one. That's just a side note. Hospitals are overrun. That's the new myth again, right, about the Delta variant. If hospitals were overrun, why are they firing doctors and nurses for not getting a vaccine? Don't you think you need them? Maybe want to keep them on the payroll for a little bit longer if you need to save all this, so that hospitals are not overrun, first of all. Second of all, people are they've gotten the strength, the motivation to say no. Here they've done that. It's some of them, like 10%, whatever it is, like you said, but before we came about, before all of this happened, that didn't exist at all. Everyone was too used to the silent majority mindset, the idea that we'll just come out and vote, and then we'll just go back and hide in the bushes. There's no more hiding in the bushes. Dan Bongino, one of my favorite. Cutesy time is over. He says it all the time. We have to play by new rules. Cutesy time, ha, kumbaya. We'll just extend the olive branch and get along. I don't want to get along with communists. I'm sorry. I don't want to get along with these people. I'm sorry. Those aren't the people I'm looking for. I'm looking for my ideological peers. I'm looking for the people that I know I can rely on, that'll be up in the front lines, or that'll be at those school board meetings. You don't have to go to meetings just to go in there and go crazy. But if you hear something to go crazy about, and you get a little heated, it's going to happen. 15 people used to go to every school board meeting, 10 people, 20 people. There's 50, 100, 150 people showing up to some of these meetings, and they're all wearing the same shirts, and they're all wearing, they're coming in with lawn signs, and they're preparing the night before, and they're organizing. And you'd mentioned that the left are great community organizers. Well, here again, anecdotally, they used to be. Black Lives Matter rallies used to be big. George Floyd protests were massive. There were people marching and doing all these things now. I have this is just to say, we have the largest and most influential political group in the state. I'm sorry. That's what's going on. Not the left. It's not Black Lives Matter. It's not Uncle George Soros. It's none of that. It's us. I see our counterparts, our BLM counterparts in the street with 15, 20 people. I mean, if I put 15, 20 people, I'd probably just hang it up and stop going out and stop being an activist at this point, because I'm doing something wrong. They're losing, and they know it. That's why I've got people who are stalking my page and been smearing the name. They're losing. And this is the first time the left has been back against the ropes here. And we have a lot more to do. But it's all about, you have to change that behavior. And the way to change that behavior, you find a trigger point. We always say the left gets triggered. You say Donald Trump, their faces melt off, their hair go on fire, they get triggered, and they start melting down. Our people get triggered too. Conservatives get triggered too. You just have to find out what matters to them. And for a lot of the suburbs who are stuck, especially Long Island, in the public school system, because both parents have to work, because it's impossible to live here. It's impossible for one person to provide for the entire family, because taxes are ridiculous. Cost of living is ridiculous. These kids are getting stuck in the public schools. And so now when they say, hey, these public schools, this is my money, we're supposed to be educating the kids the way I want them to be educated, we find out they're not being educated. They're being indoctrinated. They're not being taught how to think. They're being told what to think in these schools. That gets parents, the suburbanites, the people who are used to sitting back, who are comfortable, fat, lazy, and happy, that gets them angry. And when they get angry, they start to take action. And when they see their neighbors put the Trump flag up, or go to the school board meeting, or wear the Loud Majority shirt, or fly the American flag, it's the Fuji effect. It's the Jones effect. You have to keep up with the Joneses. Mary Smith is going to school board meetings. I'm going too. I'm going with her. And I'm going to introduce my kid to her kid. And we're going to start to grow communities organically. And it's a work in progress, and it's going to take a long time. But the formula that we've done here in the belly of the beast, Long Island, right, the suburbs, we're behind the eight ball, but we're punching back for the first time ever. And it's working, and it can happen everywhere. It can. It's not easy. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but we're all people. And a lot of us across the country all feel the same way about it. So now we just have to do the same thing. We have to walk. You have to do it in unison. We've got to be in lockstep. And it's coming. It's coming. I just hope we're not too late. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
One thing I want to just push back on this score. Of course, I love what you're doing. It's the only thing that gives me hope in the, adjacent political process that I've seen over the last year to give me any hope is actually what you guys are doing there in Long Island, Shawn. But one thing I can't, it's a nagging question, right? Like, even if all goes well and everything you hope for comes true, right? You're saying people are stuck to live in Long Island, to live anywhere in New York. This is how it was in California. People would use this. I think it's a bit of an excuse, but people would use it there in any of the locales in California too. Even if it's suddenly a red state, which I don't think it's happening, but let's take your arguendo, let's assume it. And you're saying people have to work 2 jobs, therefore their kids have to go to the public schools. You know what I mean? This is where I start pressing, where it's like, okay, we got to deal with culture as well. And it's like, okay, so the public schools are somewhat better, I guess, in this hypo, but it's like, why not come to a state like Mississippi, one of the cheapest places to live in the country, that people will find themselves divested of that excuse that you have to have both parents working, because both parents working is really a moral catastrophe for the family, even though it's popular and that pisses people off to hear. It's a fact. You need mom at home doing what you do. Homeschooling is the best, even if the public schools are maximized, optimized, whatever. So, like, I can't help but to see it as picking, like, oh, I want to stay in California. Oh, I want to stay in New York. I love place, space in California in particular, over like, okay, the individual family. What about just move to a place with a much easier economy and focus inward? And I'm not talking the Benedict option where you only focus inward. I want people to focus inward on their family, and then the fathers to go out to find the Antifa rallies and just squelch them with numbers. Right? Because that's a truly loud majority. So that's question number 1. And question number 2, why hasn't that happened? If there is a loud majority in America, and I mean, I'm pitching this to you, but I'd like the other guys to jump in here. If there is a loud majority in America, why did we see the effect that we saw, the phenomenon last summer with Antifa and Black Lives Matter running amok through the cities? And it's like, dude, are there no men here? I mean, are they just 2 weekends ago, they shut down like a Christian prayer rally in Portland. It's like, I know the kind of man that tends to by reputation inhabit Portland. They're not the kinds of guys that are going to push back if I'm operating by caricatures. But come on, there's got to be 100 dudes in the state that'll push back. If it's a loud majority, why are these terrorists, Black Lives Matter and Antifa, not just getting drowned out by numbers the way they were in November 14th last at the first Trump rally on DC that I was at, the Stop the Steal rally? It was like there were 45 Antifas or Black Lives Matter or whatever they were that showed up, and the cops were guarding them. The corrupt police force there, federal police force, were guarding them. It's like they had to be quiet because there are a lot of us. If it's a truly loud majority, that's what you'd expect to see. Okay, so those are my 2 questions. Optimize even the political approach, and you still got a cultural problem, right? And number 2, why have the left groups that Shawn's saying are dwindling, why are they still so successful? They run amok in places like Portland or Seattle or Los Angeles, or I don't know, some cities on the East Coast too, and if a Black Lives Matter, and no one steps up to stop them. I just like to see more evidence of the loud majority thing working outside of Long Island.
Well, the issue that you have is, again, the left has always been loud. They've always been vocal, and they've always been able to kind of project that they have a much larger number of them than they actually do. And that's an old technique. That's, always make your enemies think you're, if you come into battle with 100 men, your enemies have to feel like you have 100,000. And unfortunately, because of the damage they've created, because Andy No gets hit with a sock with a tuna thing, in Seattle, and he has a bloody nose and a black eye. people go, I don't want that to happen to me, and they get scared. But what they don't realize, like you said, is if they're all saying this is not okay, and then they all collectively take that step together, that doesn't happen, right? It only happens if you go into those battles alone. But when you actually show up with numbers, and you actually show up with people who care, who aren't getting paid to be there, or whatever the case may be for a lot of these activists and these protesters, you have the ability now to win those battles and to push back and to push these people, you know, and squelch them, like you said, whether it's physically, whether it's politically, whether it's just we can intimidate back. And people were intimidated for too long, coast to coast. That's the first problem. And that's a cultural problem. We've become weak, right? We've become very, very weak. We've become soft. Oh, this person called me a bad name. I don't want to go. I don't want to be called a Nazi. Listen, I mean, come on now. Like this paper here, this rag, all right, has been smeared. Like, I don't care. You want to call me a Nazi? Call me a Nazi. Whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Jewish father, not a very good Nazi. But like, you know, like politically, though, in this idea of coalescing into all of the red states, from a political standpoint, would destroy the United States of America as we know it, because you can't win an election by only winning 8 states. You have to, or 9 states. You have to be able to.
That's where secession comes in, though.
That exactly, and that's the next step.
The whole continent-sized republic.
We're not ready for that yet.
But
we're not ready for that.
We have some north-south tension happening here.
But if that's where we're going, then secession and I said that I've been saying this to Joe for the last couple of weeks. We're going to look at an East Berlin, West Berlin situation where you're going to have blue states. They're wearing masks. They're teaching CRT. They have the high taxes. They're basically little mini socialist nations. And you have red states where they're free states. You know what I mean? You don't have to wear the mask. We have quality education. We're teaching values. We're teaching morals. We have a good society. You know what I mean? We're helping each other, and we're free and we can move about. And I think that's the direction the United States is going in. The problem is the federal government keeps taking so much power that are they going to be able to at some point just impose themselves on the red states and end them too? You know, so from a political standpoint, you know, the local elections, they have a much more direct impact on your community. But you got to keep the federal government in check too, because the federal government will just grab and
it's too
and
late,
they won't
though.
let go.
That's what I keep bringing up Lincoln. It looks like I have some unresolved issue. This is what the 14th Amendment did. Passage of the 14th Amendment in 1868. Direct local action is beautiful. It's subsidiarity. It's blessed by, you know, Pope Pius XI in 1931 by calling it subsidiarity. It becomes this holy principle of localism. In the Catholic Church, it's called subsidiarity. Well, that was destroyed before the flourish of the pen by Pius XI ever happened. It was destroyed, 60 years before by Lincoln in America. And by the way, Pius IX, one of his predecessors, sent to Jefferson Davis a crown of thorns and a consolation letter because he realized that the holy localism that was represented by not the slavery, that's the underbelly, but the right-minded aspect of what Jefferson Davis had stood for. So when I see all this, I just think, we're rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. And I'm not a fatalist. I love the fact that you take to the streets, you're yelling, this is in my blood. And when I hear you say, this is what I wanted to open up to Boss and Joe, is just like, why? What happened to the conservative spirit in America? You have the Sons of Liberty like Sam Adams who are going around basically just picking a fight with the English lords in 1773, 74, 75. They're just figuring out like little chess games in order to play checkers. They're trying to manufacture a fight. And that's the American conservative spirit. It's beautiful. They're tarring and feathering the English nobles.
I'd love
pouring
to see
tea down their throats. This is the conservative spirit of America that I have any thing to do with. And Shawn said it directly, didn't he? Is like, people see a bloody nose. People in the burbs, conservatives, see a bloody nose, and that's the paradigm example. What to get scared about? Maybe if you see some guy get decapitated and you're a little bit light in the loafers, that scares you off. That just makes me want to fight more. But a bloody nose scares you? Like, it doesn't. That's not bad. You get your nose bloodied and you feel fine like in an hour. This is what it takes. It takes that little to frighten American so-called conservatives? Don't we have a problem? What of just the literal fighting spirit? Like, why are conservatives in the burbs so afraid of a literal fight? Why is this such a dirty word, Joe or boss or anyone?
Well, I agreed with everything you said. I think one of the problems, and probably one of the answers to those problems, is like all the all the references that were made in even everything we just said were political. But again, tarring and feathering and Lincoln and all that stuff, and all well and good. But what we talked about was culture, and the culture. I mean, I had want to talk about fatalism. I'm a bit fatalistic when it comes to that. So the culture is just about gone. I mean, so I think when we look at quote unquote conservatives, these same conservatives, at least a lot of the time in my experience on Long Island, they're people that maybe they voted for Trump, or maybe they have some conservative politics. But what do they? It really starts with your individual and somewhat your interior life and your intellectual life. What are they doing other than, voting takes 2 seconds. So what are you doing when you're not voting? So half of them are probably going to hang out on the dock and listen to Jimmy Buffett by their boat. You can put, I'm sorry, it's a complete waste of time. What music do you listen to? I would be surprised, there are some good classical composers that are conservative, and there are Russian Orthodox and they're Catholic and all that. But I would be surprised if anybody, whether listening or whoever, could name any of them for the most part, with some exceptions. So the music we imbibe is garbage. We don't read anything decent. So these same people, for the most part, have no experience with philosophy. They probably couldn't tell you anything about anybody's theory of the forms. They probably couldn't tell you about, I'll speak to Shawn here, Stoicism. They probably couldn't tell you, they couldn't tell you these same people will ask somebody like me, well, what's the difference between a Catholic and a Protestant? If you don't know that, the culture's gone. And the culture is gone because these, I'm telling you, these, I talk to people and it's pretty decently known that I go to an SSPX chapel and I talk to trads, I talk to regular conservatives or, people on the ground who aren't happy with this stuff, but they still give money to Netflix. I'm sorry. It doesn't doesn't add up. And, I don't know if anybody on the panel has a Netflix account, but I'm sorry. but it's like, well, you're complaining, but you're propping the institution up. Right. You know what I mean? It's 100 years ago, people might be able to recite a poem by heart. We can't do that now. You don't have any beauty to fight for. You don't have any truth to fight for. You don't even have any goodness to fight for, because you barely have, for Catholics and Christians alike, you don't have a church that most people want to fight for, because it's ruins. So, and one of the and what I forgot who said it. I think maybe Shawn said it. Tim might have said it. But conservatives are easily triggered. They're also really easy to satisfy. So Shawn and I, when we were both on Twitter, Shawn went after Larry Elder. And people got really upset.
They got mad.
Larry Elder is a joke. And if any conservative in California worth their salt votes for him, they're not a conservative at all, period.
Yeah, you want to talk about capitulation. I mean, this guy, if you're trans, you can use whatever bathroom you want. Yeah. No, you can't. No, you can't do that. Why are you selling out now? Oh, well, and this is what they said. Well, he has to play the middle to get elected. Tim, you just said that before. They want to play the middle. No, you don't have to play the middle to get elected. Ask Donald Trump. He didn't play the middle. We're going to build a wall. Okay, he called the people coming over the border bad hombres. There's nothing centrist about that terminology, right? You know what I mean? Like, but okay, fine.
He did do the trans thing in the first part of his campaign, though. Yeah,
but it was ridiculous.
Which was so gay.
the problem is, and yeah, Larry Elder said that. He talked about, oh yeah, Joe Biden won the election fair and square. I don't want to get your channel shut down, so I'm not going to say anything else about it because they flag these things. But like, are you kidding me? 81 million, really? And you're going to say that? Why? To appeal to Democrats in California who aren't going to vote for you anyway? So when I heard Larry Elder, and I used to have so much respect for Larry Elder, and now, I'm running for governor, so I'm just going to sell out everything I've built my career on, all the people that have contributed to making me who I am and giving me that platform and being there for me, Larry Elder. I'm gonna just double barrel middle finger to all the loyal people that I've had for years and say, hey, you know what? You got a ding dong? You want to go pee in the ladies' room? Go ahead. Do your thing. Are you kidding me?
Wait. I agree with 100% of that. I agree 100% of what Joe said. But here's the one angle I think everyone's missing. You only get right of center conservatives to start enjoying the fight, which isn't something that maybe comes natural to them. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like I think the fight is where we need to get. I don't think anything's wrong. I think this is actually perfect for the time, right? But the only time you get a bunch of conservatives within the center-right constituency to be like, you're right, screw voting for Larry Elder in California or Bruce Jenner in California or whatever other freak the Republican Party of California is going to put up, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whatever left coddling freak they're going to put up. The only way you get people in the center-right constituency to be like, you're right, screw that, I'm not going to vote for them, is for the counter-revolution to be on. That doesn't mean it has to be like a hot war, but that people have to recognize, there's some cultural thing that's happening that's bigger than any of this political theater. And what's happening is really like, so people are now, we got, community organizing from the right wing in the streets, which is what I wrote Rules for Retrogrades, the book, about. We should get that to your loud majority people, Shawn. I think that would mesh real well with your people. But you can't do it and still be top-down political solution. I think once a bunch of the center-right see there's a cultural groundswell, a movement that's happening, then they're going to be more comfortable bidding adieu to, their vote and just saying, I'm taking the Joe Boca and being like, well, I'm not going to vote. If I'm not going to vote for Larry Elder, I'm not going to vote for Bruce Jenner, the guy with the ding dong who's trying to take the right?
Look, I'm saying this is crazy. How can we not just start from the premise that that's insane? You can't pretend there's nothing wrong with that. You have to start from that premise. It's crazy. It's insane. And we should all be saying that. It's nutso. It's absolutely crazy. And if you can't say that, start there. Okay. I was just watching it.
How about Bruce Jenner? It's nuts.
It's nuts. No, but they're literally pretending there's nothing wrong with this. And I'm like, where are you? Where are you mentally? Like, just to pretend to even say it. If I try to say there's nothing wrong with it out loud, I start laughing. Like, I can't even say that. Let's start there. Okay. Let's get out of that position. Cause that's just nuts.
Bruce Jenner. It's nuts.
And second of all, Joe was talking about this and it kind of hit me personally. Cause just the other night I was watching, if you need to start somewhere with philosophy, okay. I know I'm kind of, getting sidetracked here, but start with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. All right. I heard about this guy named Socrates. All right. Socrates sounds really good. Okay. Start there. Okay. But really though, we can't even just all agree that it's mental to be like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Just if you got a ding dong, you're flopping around, you want to go in the women's bathroom, go ahead. That's fine. You just vote for me. Like, no, stop. Full stop. We got to start from that premise. That's not okay.
No, it's so funny. I say to people, if we can't find common ground on the fact that there are literally two genders and then there's one bathroom, one gender uses one bathroom, and gender wasn't ever supposed to be used to determine someone's biology, but that's a story for a different day. If we can't settle on that, right? What can we settle on? Yeah. Right? Yeah. If we can't settle on up is up and down is down, what can we settle on?
Yeah. When people are like, look, we need to debate this. We need some science. We need to get clinical up in here. When you're like, men can't have babies or men have ding dongs.
But if you say men can't have babies, If you say men can't have babies, the left says, how dare you? What do you mean, how dare you? A man cannot birth a child.
But Shawn,
it's something
Shawn,
that can't go on.
Excuse me, the governor
thinks a man can birth a child now, or near half a country. The culture is lost. That's what I'm saying. That's true. Thing that I'm trying to say. We can't settle for political solutions when half the country thinks that men can birth babies, or that this invites further scientific discussion. They still think the science is valid and would vindicate that. They're just certifiably insane, and I don't want to be part of a republic with them. And that's why
Look, that's another way that Arnold Schwarzenegger was a trailblazer, okay? He was giving birth to children before he was the governor even. So men can have babies. We've seen the science, okay? They even documented it. That was a documentary. That was not a film.
Oh my!
That was not like
Bruce Jenner. It's nuts.
What's the new term that they're saying women they're not mothers anymore? What was it? It was something
birthing persons.
Birthing person.
Yeah.
Chest feeding, by the way. You're not allowed to say breastfeeding anymore. It's chest feeding.
Right.
Chest feeding. Yeah. Because that's not nuts.
Do we have a count on the number of times ding dong was said, or
ding dong? But it's when you have a governor candidate in California who you think is a conservative and is an ally and is letting ding dongs walk into the non-ding dong bathroom, you have a problem.
Well, the men have to have a place where they can chest feed their children. We should probably call it here. I like all of you guys. I like pretty much everything everyone said. But does anyone have any parting shots that chest feeding or Bruce Jenner related?
Yeah, starting with Socrates is a good move.
Yeah,
it's also better than starting with Aristotle, Tim.
Socrates never wrote anything though.
Oh,
it was all memorialized by his boy, Plato.
Yeah, but if you watch the film, he interprets live form on stage. Socrates is like motioning, and then so yeah, just start there.
Yeah. Well, any other parting shots?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll flash my identification now just to let you know I don't believe in this because it never works in the supermarket. My white privilege card. Okay. This is my prop. This is one of my favorite things. I actually had a woman who said to me, "Whoa, wow." She asked me a question. She said, well, if you can keep your skin color or your gender, what would you keep? And I looked her right in the eye and I said, ma'am, I'd keep both because I don't have a choice. I'm always going to be a guy and I'm always going to be white. And then she goes, well, you don't believe in white privilege? And I said, no. I took my card out. She goes, why? I said, because I tried to buy groceries with this and it never works. And she goes, you have a white privilege card? I said, yeah, for people like you, so that I can humiliate you in front of your 17-year-old son. Because he even goes, Ma, asking about the skin color or the gender, that wasn't a good question. He really doesn't have a choice. And I was like, well, your son is on my side. So and he's a left leaner in the school. I said, so yeah, I've tried to buy groceries. I tried to get into places. I use that card all the time. They're like, oh no, this doesn't work here. I'm like, well, that's racist.
Where in the hell did you get that thing? I like that you get it and you try to implement it, and there's a lot of effort behind this.
Someone gave it to me. He came in at work and threw it at me. He goes, hey, I got you something. And I was like, you're going to get me in trouble with that. So I have a white privilege card, and I do try and use it in places, I'll just, Stop and Shop. Okay, it'll be $32.60. And I'm like, all right, cool. Put that on my card. And they'll take it and swipe it a few times and not realize what they're doing. They're like, oh, I'm sorry, your card's not working. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's just because white privilege isn't real. Sorry. I'm sorry. Here, you'll use this one instead. And so they're like, what? It's great. But, it makes light of a situation. But it also opens people's, oh, wow. He is white. He did have to pay for his groceries. Wow, interesting. It's
you do? You have to pay?
Yeah, it's great.
That's weird. I don't know.
Yeah.
Until we're not allowed in the grocery store.
Until we're not allowed in the grocery store, right? Because I don't put a face
coming,
diaper
baby.
on, or I'm not vaccinated or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, where do you apply for one of those? I'd like to see if I could get one and see if it would work for me.
I think the Hodge twins sell them. They're all over the place. This one says officialjoelpatrick.com. Someone gave this to me, so I'm not exactly sure where to get them, but you can find them anywhere.
I wonder if my credit's good enough to get it to work for me. Anyway, do you guys have any plugs you want to shout out? Besides support Loud Majority if you're anywhere near Long Island. I have this Veterans United
Unitedchapter.com website that I'd like to direct people to. It is the Faith and Freedom Men's Conference that's happening on September 10th and 11th. Shawn, if you wanted to meet in person, Joe, are you coming out for that? Boss, you are, right?
I think so.
Yeah, you should try to come out. Shawn, you should bring some Loud Majority.
Where is this?
This will be in at Atlanta, Hotlanta.
So this is on the September 11th weekend. We're going to be very busy here because it's 20-year anniversary. I think we're doing either the Towers Walk. We've got a tribute set up on Friday the 10th. We've got another big one going on Sunday the 12th. So there's a lot going on. But if something does fall through, I'll come down to Hotlanta and see what goes on. That would be great.
New York would be big for the 20th anniversary. Anyway, go to veteransunited.com. People in the Faith and Freedom Men's Conference on September 10th and 11th in Hotlanta, Georgia. Should be good. Hopefully Joe and Boss will both be there with me, and I'll be there with my buddies Roosh, who's going to come on the show next week, Roosh V, and Jesse Lee Peterson, and my buddy Dr. Michael Robillard, and many others. So it'll be a good time. Also, do homeschool your children. I'm Shawn earmuffs. Yeah, cover up here.
No. I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
And the Catholic schools, get them into homeschooling.
I'm with you on that. 100% homeschooling. You have to do it. I mean, here in New York, I was watching what happened in East Meadow last night. You have to do it.
You have to.
We lost Tim.
Yeah,
Tim's gone.
Tim's gone. He's checked out.
I vanished.
We don't have the host anymore. Been abandoned.
Where can I get a weight bench like that, Joe? Just one that drops through my ceiling and I start pumping 25s on either end.
One day I walked downstairs and it was just here, so I couldn't tell you.
Like Donnie Darko? Like, did that fall on your bed in your room? Or,
yeah, I walked downstairs. I'm like, oh, someone was nice enough to drop this here.
To plant this in my ceiling.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a seed that can do that. Anyway, so yeah, no, I think we all agree about homeschooling. I was just kidding, Shawn, because of your excellent work on the school boards. But people should go to timothyjgordon.com, click enroll. This is the last weekend before our homeschooling semester begins. And really all it is help for homeschoolers and continuing adult ed. We got classes like Algebra 1 and Latin 1 for those who are too intimidated to homeschool that. Adults are taking these courses. We also have church history, U.S. history, Catholic social teaching, Aristotle, some other class that I've forgotten about. It's great. Go to timothyjgordon.com. That's where you can tend to your homeschooling or adult education needs, if you call them that. And please do like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. I don't bring that up nearly often enough. And if you want to support this program, buy my new book, The Case for Patriarchy, which can be purchased at Sophia Institute Press at sophia.com. And, of course, Patreon. God bless you guys. Thanks, everyone, for coming on the show. And we'll have this group together again. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did, too. Death Volt.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit